Hello, this is Iyabo. How are you? It is Saturday, August 19th, and this is day 19 of the Go Live Every Day in August Lou Bartone Challenge. And we've been talking about leadership development and emotional intelligence. And we've gone through three components of emotional intelligence: self-perception, self-expression, and interpersonal relationships. And each one has three subcomponents. And so, look who joined us. Hello there, old friend. And so separate from that is there are two more components we're going to address, but there's several questions were inboxed to me yesterday, and I wanted to speak to this issue. One person was saying she did not feel she was a leader. She's just a stay-at-home mom, but she found the information important because the thing of leadership, let's go with that L again, that L, you have task and you have taken people along on the task. And she said, but she does find herself reaping the benefits of leadership and talking about those things, developing leadership traits in her role as a mother. And I texted back and forth with her and told her, you are absolutely a leader. Another woman had a very interesting question about how does she deal with embracing these leadership behavioral personal development traits of leadership, and how does she take them in when she had been to prison, and her biggest issue was reintegrating back into her life at home. And that was very interesting. And we're going to talk about that a little bit. And then another person talked about how they felt undeserving of leadership because of some trauma they had gone through. And I just thought it was really interesting how these three questions came up yesterday. So I wanted to take a pause in the emotional intelligence piece and go back and address some of these issues for us so that we can put ourselves on track for this issue of of leadership development. How do I develop myself as a leader when I don't feel worthy? And the evidence of my unworthiness, that my home life is not functioning. I have this colorful history. I have this trauma. I'm just a stay-at-home mom, which there's nothing just about that. Or I'm just an employee at a company. I'm not in leadership for anyone. The thing about leadership is the thing of influence. So when you think leadership, I want you to think of influence. Our whole country in the United States right now is going through a redefining of leadership. And that's part of why I decided to do this entire series on leadership. We came out of, for me, a really incredible leader, Barack Obama, who was sensitive, who was diplomatic, who was an intellectual. He was very smart. He had some strong opposition, and I'm sure there are lots of people that would say some of what he did was not positive or whatever. But I know for me personally, he met my personal criteria for leadership. And now we have another person who's lacking in leadership capacity, right? So this issue of what is a leader and how do we exercise leadership is what is so critically important. So one of the first things I want to tell you, Jeanette, I'm so happy to see you here. One of the first things I want to tell you about with leadership is leaders grow. For the entire lifespan of a leader, you keep growing, you keep embracing personal development. The second thing is that you do not define yourself. No human, forget whether you're a leader or not, no human wants to define themselves based on trauma or anything negative that has happened to the person, because life itself is about the blossoming of life and not so much about the trauma of life. So do I agree that trauma comes? Yes, it comes. Yes, it happens. Life happens. Even when we don't want it to happen, those things happen. But right along those things comes joy, grace, blessings, good things that propel us forward, that give us hope, right? That push us forward. So the issue of trauma is not, how do I now define myself based on this trauma of prison or illness or whatever, but what am I reaching towards? What is that goal I want? Where am I heading? You know, we're always going somewhere. We're always creating newness. Anytime you're breathing, you're creating newness. You know, I'm thinking of this evening, I'm going to head out and do some things. I'm thinking about tomorrow. I'm thinking about the fact that I'll be at Wake Forest at the end of the month. That is life pulling you forward, right? And so that is what gets to define you. And that is what lights you up and moves you and propels you forward. Not, oh my God, something horrible happened to me 3 months ago or a year ago. Though the trauma of life, right, is just a break to help you appreciate what is. That's how I look at it. And that's and when I'm going through a hard time, that's what I hold on to. And so that's the thing I want you to do, to think about. The second woman who emailed me about how do I reintegrate myself into my family life and try and pick back up and move into leadership after I've been to prison and I have this family I'm trying to nurture, is one of the things that happens. First of all, I'm familiar with the prison experience, and you know, I can relate to women in prison and women who've been to prison. The thing that you have to recognize is something like prison, something like illness, something like the loss of a child. It's an interruption in a flow. Let me say that again. It's an interruption in a flow of life, but it is not a dead end, right? It's a pause. It's a pause and not a dead end. And I'm speaking from personal experience here. Your dreams and hopes are still there. Your desire for a better life is still there. And that is what you want to hold on to. Sometimes your actual circumstances do not feed your imagination. But why do we have imagination? I always go back to the scriptures, which for me as a Christian, like my embedded theology is, we're all made and created in the image of God, right? And that word image speaks to imagination. It speaks to anticipation. It speaks to laying a framework down, right? This is how you're designed, and you're designed to imagine a hopeful future. And so as you deal with family, one, you recognize that you're in a space of interruption, a space of pause, right? And you need some tender healing. You need some self-care. You need some understanding. But you also are envisioning a hopeful future and a life filled with goodness and joy and amazing things for you. There's nobody that doesn't deserve amazing things. And so these are some of the things I want us thinking about. Again, going back to the very first component of emotional intelligence, which is self-perception, self-regard, how you think of yourself, right? During these times, these things are so critical. And so the key thing is noticing your language. So when you have a pause, an interruption, a trauma happen, are you being self-critical? Are you saying, I'm just a dud? Or are you saying, these good things don't happen to me? Or are you saying, pause. This thing was not a good thing, but you know what? I remember so many good things that have happened. I remember that I'm capable of so much more than this. That self-talk that you're telling yourself is what shapes your imagination and that hopeful future you're putting yourself towards. And so today, my encouragement for each of us is going back to that self-regard piece of emotional encouragement and thinking through this issue of, of what are we saying to ourselves. Catch yourself. Catch yourself. Oops, I just call myself a dud. Like, I have this policy. If I'm with you as a friend and you say, oh my God, I can't believe I did something so stupid, I'm like, no, 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 no. Stop right there. You don't get to talk about my friend like that. You're my friend. I don't let you self-abuse in my presence, right? But then I find myself self-abusing sometimes. Isn't that silly? But it's good. As you do it for other people, you will do it for yourself too. So watch language, right? We would never say to a little 2-year-old, you're just a stupid little oaf. But why do we say that to ourselves? Why do we say that to ourselves? I love a meme I put on Facebook the other day. This thing gave me so much joy. It said, I say to someone, I'm so fat. The other person says, but you're beautiful. And me, I say, did I tell you I wasn't beautiful? You know, I think that like summarizes it all, like in terms of how we talk to ourselves, where we say, oh, I'm fat, but we assume that also means I'm fat, I'm not beautiful, I'm not this, I'm not that. And when someone reflects it back to us, then we see it so clearly. So I want you to play with that. The other little piece I want to talk about that when I texted back and forth with a couple of these folks yesterday, messengering on Facebook, was how often shame came up and how often this feeling of shame. And I think right now with so much going on in the world, a lot of people are in touch with this feeling of shame. So from Brene Brown, we know there's a difference between shame and guilt. Guilt is I did something bad. Shame is I'm bad. Something's fundamentally flawed with me. And so a lot of people, when you don't treat guilt right, you know, our emotions are what I call our language, our internal language. So when you're feeling bad, you need to understand that you've been telling yourself some bad things and your emotions are saying, we don't like what you're saying. When you're feeling joy, more, right? So shame is saying your self-talk is saying you are not a good enough person. That's what your self-talk is saying. So when you feel shame, the way you counter it is to go look at how am I being self-critical? How am I being self-pitying? And what can I do to rescript my language around myself? Some people can handle affirmations. Some people can handle quantum affirmations. Oh, I'm a gazillionaire kind of thing. But putting yourself in the space of saying, there are things I appreciate about myself. There's a lot of good in that history. That, yeah, there have been some mistakes, and I can accept that there have been some mistakes, but remembering no one's perfect, remembering we're here for a journey, this life is a journey. These are things that help you reshape and reframe the language of self-talk. So today, what I want you to know is if you're stuck in any of these areas, send me a private message. My email is hello@coachiyabo.com. Iyabo is spelled I-Y-A-B-O. All our conversations are confidential. They're non-intrusive. Lots of gentleness, peace, and grace. Grace abounds over here at Coach Iyabo. And so my prayer for you today is that you will be happy. You will have ease. You will be free and you will experience great love because that does exist for each of us. Thank you so much for joining me today. Look forward to seeing you on my timeline tomorrow. Peace. Bye.